Welcome. Good to see everyone. We had a special event last week, and I know you were all thrilled to meet Amchi Seringpalmo, so it was a surprise. And just to say, Vajra Dakini will be making a donation, and if you want to make a donation to Vajra Dakini through PayPal, and then there's a section that says notes or more or something, you can write LNA for the Ladakh Nuns Association. Then we'll make one bank transfer. And she is currently raising money for the mobile clinic, a kind of both a clinic to give medical care in rural areas and also for disaster relief. So what a lovely gift for Easter. Now we're back in the Heart Sutra again, and I'm going to go to a PowerPoint just to keep things clear. And because we're pretty much going into logic, I thought we'd start out with something visual, just because it's, let's say, a little bit of joy arising before we get into some of the work of things. So this is a Tibetan on our left, tanka of Prajnaparamita, and on the right, a statue. This is a classic Mahayana statue. I'm not sure exactly when it was done, but just seeing the visual representations of the teaching. Okay. So, just to review where we are. In the first paragraph, we were introduced essentially to what the Heart Sutra is about. Sorry. Oh no. As always, the first sentence or two presents both the view and where we're going. So Avalokiteshvara is practicing the Prajnaparamita, or the insight that brings us to the other shore, and had a realization, or suddenly discovered. And this discovery was that all of the 5 skandhas are equally empty, and with this realization, he overcame all ill being. So we have the Buddha deep in samadhi, and Avalokiteshvara is practicing, and with the blessing of that samadhi has a realization and discovery. And then Shariputra, who represents all of us, essentially says, well, how do I understand this? Or how do I practice? And the whole Heart Sutra is Avalokiteshvara's response to Shariputra. And we have the classic, and I think I want to go back to the discovery itself, that the 5 skandhas are equally empty, and that realization of the emptiness of the 5 skandhas overcomes all ill being. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at the 5 skandhas, we're looking at emptiness and the relationship of the 5 skandhas and emptiness to our suffering or ill-being. So Shariputra asked, and how? How do we do this? So then Avalokiteshvara starts the very, very classic stanza, form is empty, and Thich Nhat Hanh brings it closer to home and says, okay, let's not look at all of form. Let's just start with ourselves, with our own experience, and say, this body is emptiness. And as we've been looking at emptiness, and we'll keep going deeper, but just to give us a clue, either emptiness as interbeing, empty of a separate self, interdependent, impermanent. So these are all understandings of the word emptiness, but it always means empty of something. So it is moving, it is changing, and it's empty of a separate self. So in Thich Nhat Hanh's translation, he goes right to, okay, let's not begin with how we experience the world. Let's begin with just what we experience. We know we have a very solid sense of self, culturally in this life and from countless lifetimes. So if we're going to explore what does it mean to be empty of a separate self, we have to define the parameters. And the parameters are the 5 skandhas. So we could say, if I lost my car keys or if I lost my phone, it would have to be in my house. And my house has 5 rooms. And I have to look at each and every room really carefully until I see it's not in that particular room. So in the presentation, let's say, of logic, or how to understand and order this search, how do we classify the 5 rooms of how we experience? And we could say, okay, we have a body and a mind. So that's one kind of classification. The body is matter, the mind is not matter. So that's a distinction. So I can say, all right, there are 2 primal distinctions. And then if we think about our mind, we could say, well, our mind also has distinctions. And those distinctions we might classify as feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. So, of course, they cross over into each other. But for the purpose of exploration, we can say, well, this is generally true. My feelings are different from my body. They might affect my body, but they seem to be different. Perceptions, mental formation, consciousness, they're all categories. They're categories that make up the mind, but they're seemingly different experiences. All right, I'm gonna go. So let's define the skandhas a little more particularly. So we're thinking of this house that I call myself, and we have body or form, and that's mass or something that has dimension or weight. So I'm sitting on a chair in front of a table. I can touch the table. The table has weight, has dimension, it has mass. My body has mass. I can touch my body and feel the size. When I move my arms, I can feel the weight. Okay, so that's muscle, bone, organs, very a quality, a specific dimension of our experience. Then we have feelings, and feelings are generally defined as pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. But they're very interesting because we can see how they condition our experience, how they function. So I'm looking out the window and it looks cold and rainy. So that conditions my experience of, I don't want to go outside, it doesn't look pleasant. So there's a relationship, and then there is a, feelings are like a bridge to our experience of our body, in the sense of, if we feel anger, there might be some heat arising in our body, or we might blush. So they're qualitatively different. Then the third room is called perceptions. And this is the aspect of our mind that functions in the dualistic framework, making differences. Like, there is gold and there's green on our screen. So we distinguish gold is not green, gold is not white, gold is not black, and green is not gold, green is not white. We're making distinctions, and we're reinforcing the dualistic framework continuously with these distinctions. Things are either or, and our mind functions to place them in the either or the or. That's pretty concrete, but well, we'll go into looking at our minds and experiencing these different skandhas in a few minutes in the meditation part of our practice today. But think about how, I'm looking right in front of me, I see a chair. A chair is not a table is not a chair. I'm making a distinction. Then the next room is called mental formations. And this is the category of ideas and imagination, also will and intention. So for instance, we imagined next Sunday to be a hybrid event. And with that will or intention, we made a plan, and we're bringing that hybrid event. It's going to be different from this Sunday. We're bringing that hybrid event into being. So it's a different aspect of our mind, a different way that our mind functions, still a part of our mind. And then we have consciousness. And in Khenpo Palden Cherub's definition, he's defining consciousness very broadly. So consciousness is the whole storehouse of all of our karmic seeds that we have brought with us into this life, and the movement of our experiencing the world that's connected to the 6 consciousnesses. So let's say the category consciousness is this big ocean, and the ocean arises as our sense of smell, our sense of taste, our sense of touch, and our perception of our thoughts. So in order for our senses and our thinking to function, there has to be a consciousness or a knowing that identifies the smell. I have a fragrant plant in front of me. I can't remember the name, so my consciousness isn't working, but I can identify the smell, and the smell goes with the color and shape of that plant. Or I'm seeing the plant and I'm seeing the leaves and the flowers, et cetera, et cetera. There's a knowing capacity when the sense object and when the sense object meets the sense, there is a knowing, first of all, related to a specific sense that this smells in a particular way. There has a fragrance. And then the mental consciousness says, and that fragrance is associated with this word that I use a symbol for this plant. So there's a big ocean that is constantly functioning and informing, functioning in terms of recognizing the data that our senses brings in, and then recognizing the word or interpretation of that data and naming it. So again, you can see they fit together because the consciousness that names hyacinth, that names the plant hyacinth, says, well, it's not hydrangea, it's not lily. It's working together with the distinctions. But if we were to look just generally, we could say that, well, how my senses are functioning is actually qualitatively different from my feelings, qualitatively different from my perceptions. And I'm looking at the hydrangea and noticing, well, it's dead, I'm going to compost it. Then my mental formation is that sense of I am going to do this that leads to an action, actually composting it. So there's been this incredible work of the Abhidharma, or let's say the natural science combined with logic, to say if we're going to have a search, we have to know where we're searching, and we have to be fairly specific about the search and the classifications, so that with our shamatha, we can stably look at just one category at a time and really establish for ourselves, well, this is truly empty of a separate self. If we are sort of running from place to place to place, we aren't totally satisfying that it's actually not in this room. Sort of, I have searched this room, I've searched the kitchen, but I'm going to run to the bathroom and take a quick look there. But then I'm going to run to the bedroom and take a quick look there. We end up not quite knowing that the phone or the car keys are definitely not in this room. So we're establishing these rooms, not because they're not functioning all together, but they can allow a thorough search. And with that thorough search, we can really understand, oh, it's absolutely not there. So as we progress with our examination of the Heart Sutra, we're going to look at the nature of emptiness relative to each of the rooms, how we're defining emptiness, and how this extraordinarily beautiful stanza, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is none other than emptiness, emptiness is none other than form, or as Thich Nhat Hanh translates it, even more specifically, the body is emptiness, emptiness is the body, emptiness is none other than the body is none other than emptiness. Essentially, by examining and searching each of the separate rooms or categories, each of the skandhas, doing it very thoroughly and with clarity, we're looking at the dualistic framework, and we're examining, does the dualistic framework hold up when we really examine it? Or is it flawed? We're trying to see through our assumptions. The insight that brings us to the other shore is piercing those assumptions and opening up to a fullness beyond duality. So we have to look at, how does duality function? Essentially, how does our thinking function? And looking at each of the rooms, body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, is there a separate self that is somewhere in this experience? We're asking 4 questions. Well, is it existing? Is it not existing? Is it both, like slammed into a sandwich, existing and not existing, or neither existing or not existing? So this extraordinary, beautiful verse is defining the search, defining where we're searching, and looking at our assumption of dualism that defines our experience that's overlaid by ignorance. And it defines it in terms of 4 categories. The body itself is emptiness, or it's existing. Emptiness itself is this body not existing. The body is none other than emptiness, existence and emptiness slammed together like a sandwich, or emptiness is not other than this body, neither. So this is big. Essentially, we are looking at how we think and how we experience. What are the assumptions we carry? Do those assumptions hold up when we examine them? And when we are able to pierce those assumptions from the perspective of Avalokitesvara and the Buddha, the realization that brings us to the other shore opens up. So in the same way, we're looking at the rooms of our house that are our experience of self. We're also looking at, well, is there even a house? Is there a house and a phenomenal world? How do all of these definitions that become assumptions that define the roots of suffering do they stay in place, or do they expand into something bigger and beyond when we look at them really carefully? So this is why we did all of the shamatha meditation. We did the shamatha meditation, well, of course, for many reasons, but when we get into the subtlety of it, when we're looking at what causes our ill-being, what causes our suffering, it's related to this deeply held belief in a solid self that's separate from an outside world. And we're going to look at, are we starting with a false assumption? So let's take a little time now. I'm going to go back to the 5 skandhas, and I'm just going to invite you to gently explore really this presentation. Can we locate these distinctions, these aspects of experience? And we're not even going to go farther than that today. Let's just say today we're going to just locate them and become familiar with them. I'm going to go back to the five skandhas. So if you were observing your own experience, your experience of yourself, your physicality and your mind, and these different functioning aspects of your mind. Just touch base with each of them, see how large they are, see how inclusive they are. From the perspective of Buddhist philosophy, we would say these categories include our experience. All our experience fits into one of these categories. So just explore that. Let's take about 5 or 10 minutes first to settle our mind. And then I'll read the definition, one definition at a time, every couple of minutes. So first, let's focus on our breathing, settling our mind from the sort of excitement of the Heart Sutra's presentation, the intellectual excitement. Remembering that the realization of fresh peace, vastness that the Buddha had, just acknowledging our chaotic mind, but letting that mind settle. And ask yourself the question, what is my experience of selfhood that I carry and protect and defend, rationalize, that experiences mental pain, experiences trauma, at the same time navigates life, thinks. This complexity, can we look at this complexity in terms of basic categories? So let's begin with, okay, there's the physicality, the actual mass. Your body that started out as a teeny tiny baby, carried you through decades, the muscles, the bones, the organs, the skeleton. If we break an arm, we'd be breaking my arm. We're having an appendix removed, removing my appendix. That quality of self and body. So then we can move to the next category, the aspect of self that doesn't have mass and weight. We would say, I am angry, I am upset, I am happy, I am peaceful. Examine how we understand our feelings and how we connect them to self, just in our direct experience. I was going to say I'm tired, I am hungry. Those are a little more complex. So let's just stick with feeling at ease, feeling fearful, it's a qualitative experience of an aspect of what we call mind. Then perceptions. That aspect of mind that makes distinction. I'm reaching for my cup. A cup is different from a glass. It's different from a pot. I make a distinction about a particular form. And it's my cup, it's not your cup. Those of you who have grandchildren who are learning, this is mine, you can't have it. So there is a connection to our dualistic framework in that making of distinctions. And just checking in. This is a computer, it's on a table, the table's on the floor. All these distinctions, that is a different kind of function of the mind than feelings. And it's something without weight or mass. Just check in. Why have we made this a different room in the house? This analytic aspect of our mind. Then the next category, mental formations, the aspect of will and intention. So will or intention arises, I am reaching for the cup. It's different than naming the cup and distinguishing the cup from the table. It's just before an action, I'm reaching for the cup. That will that precedes the action, the intention that precedes the action. The idea of next week, we're having a different kind of gathering. So it brings this idea into reality. Those of you who are artists, that dreaming up, there's the empty page, and then you dream up the painting. Find that aspect of your mind. You can all probably relate to, I'm going to make a sandwich for lunch. Different from a feeling, different from defining a distinction between sandwich and other kind of food. It's the function of the mind of an idea or impulse that leads to action. Again, experiment, notice how that is a separate room. And then we have the biggest category, consciousness. And we'll go into that in more detail later as we study the Heart Sutra. But let's just say the knowing functioning of the mind. There's a knowing related to each sense that's very different. The knowing of smell is different from the knowing of seeing. It's different from the knowing of a touch. The knowing then that names and recognizes, it's the hyacinth smell. It's the firmness of the wood, the smoothness of the wood under my hand. Granted, it's an artificial separation, but for the purpose of exploration, defining different rooms is very helpful so that we can be really thorough.